Hello, everyone. Welcome to our virtual seminar, Maximizing Revenue, Aligning Internal Growth Strategy, and Succeeding in Value-Based Care, an Open Minds executive seminar on marketing strategy. In today's virtual seminar, we'll provide a deep dive on our essential and proprietary marketing planning process, which gives you the strategy and tools needed to compete in the complex consumer marketplace. I'm Stacy Fox, Senior Associate at Open Minds, and in just a few moments, I'll formally introduce you to our session presenters, Casey Zanetti, Senior Associate at Open Minds, and Timothy Snyder, Chief Marketing Officer for Open Minds. Before we get started, I need to share a few important items. All presentations and recordings will be available on the event website of PMI in a few days and will be available to all registrants for 30 days after the event. We are looking for your feedback at the end of next week. You will receive a link to complete a brief customized survey. Please take a few moments to share your experience and ideas. It helps us inform our educational content, and we appreciate your input. Don't forget to follow the highlights of next week's Performance Management Institute on LinkedIn and Twitter at Open Minds Circle using the hashtag OMPerformance. And please take time to visit our exhibiting partners on our Institute webpage. We appreciate their support and couldn't have done this without them. Now, to introduce you to our presenters, Casey Zanetti brings more than 15 years of experience in marketing strategy, brand development, product launch, and customer success to the Open Minds team. She currently serves as a senior associate in our consulting practice. Timothy Snyder brings a unique combination of marketing, business development, and online media expertise to Open Minds. Since joining our team in 2008, he has led over 20 strategic marketing and sales-focused projects, including comprehensive product launch initiatives, corporate rebranding positioning projects, and website design and online marketing programs for some of the largest and most influential pharmaceutical and technology organizations in the industry. In addition to his work in the consulting practice, Mr. Snyder currently oversees the marketing, public relations, and sales divisions of Open Minds. And with that, I will hand it over to the two of you. Casey and Timothy, thank you.
Thanks, Stacy. That bio was rather flattering. I'm not gonna lie, made me sound pretty good. So my name's Tim Snyder. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Open Minds. If you've come to an Open Minds marketing seminar or education program over the past 10 years, you've probably seen me present, but I want to go out of my way to welcome my colleague Casey Zanetti, who is a huge add to the Open Minds marketing team. Casey will be joining me in this seminar both on the virtual side, and then next week when we're in Clearwater. I guess we're kicking off, or this is kind of a interesting beginning to the Performance Management Institute. Usually I've had some sand in my shoes by now. But nonetheless, if you're here for the marketing program, we will not disappoint. Our agenda for today, we'll start with, if you want to move ahead, we'll start with the marketing landscape. We'll get into why strategic marketing is so crucial, especially now in a market so driven towards value. Then we'll actually go into those, deep dive steps of developing a marketing plan, doing the marketing analysis, and some of the marketing strategies you can use to be successful in your organizations. Then a new kind of element to this program, because it was always the #1 question we got. We'll get into some tactics, as well as everybody's favorite part, budgeting. How much is it going to cost? How do we figure out how much money we need to make this work? So with that, we have some learning objectives too, I believe. Yep. So when you leave here, you will understand the current landscape and the importance of marketing in today's world. The presentation deck itself will kind of leave you with a how-to step-by-step approach to building a marketing strategy, as well as some helpful tools and examples. And then those components for doing the budget, including even revenue forecasting expense budgets and your ROI, so you can make that case to the rest of either your board or your executive team. And with that, I'll pass off to Casey.
Hey. So the first thing we're going to do is just a couple really quick polls. We want to see who's in the virtual room so that we can cater our conversation towards you. So the first one is, what type of organization are you from? And I can't see it. So
I can see it.
Sure, you can see it. Okay, it looks like it has closed.
There we go.
I can't see the results, Tim, so you're going to have to tell me what the results are.
88% provider.
Okay, and then
13% consultant.
okay.
And I'm no math genius, but 88 and 13 do not add up to 100.
So they're
roll with it.
okay. And it could just be that the other doesn't show up because apparently we have restrictions on how many questions we can ask. Okay, and then what role do you play within your organization? Okay. Tim, you're
So we
gonna
have 14% are executive level, but not in marketing.
Okay.
43% executive level marketing. 29% in marketing business development, and then 14% in finance and operations.
Oh, interesting. Cool. So it's an interesting, yeah, that's great. Okay, so the landscape. So I have been in healthcare marketing, like Tim said, for 15 plus years, actually in healthcare technology selling into large health systems. And I honestly have never seen such a shift in the market that I've seen over the last couple of years as a result of COVID. I just know that technology was so hard to get adopted, that there's just so much change that's happened. And I guess the first thing that I want to acknowledge here is that it's hard to keep up. It's hard to know where to focus your energy. And I think that for me, that's why strategic marketing plans are so critical, because it helps you understand and get focused on the right things for your organization. And we'll talk a little bit about KPIs and about metrics to measure so that you can make sure that what you're doing is actually impacting your business. So, so this graph right here, the reason that I put this up here, you're probably familiar with them, but if you're not, Rock Health is a California-based seed fund, and they've been doing this year-end report for a number of years now. And I want to call your attention over to the right of this first graphic. So there's been kind of a steady growth with funding and investment in the market for digital health. In 2020, it almost doubled, and that was a big deal. But then we come into 2021, and by the end of 2021, we're almost at $30 billion in investment money. So there's a lot of money going into this space right now. And then over here, the second graphic is really at the top of that, where a lot of the money is landing, is within mental health. So in 2017, it was about 500 million, and at the end of 2021, it was $5.1 billion is being invested in digital health. So there's a shift that's happened. There's a lot of attention that's happening here, and I think that it's here to stay. Is what I'm getting from that. And then I think that this is another really interesting graphic. So Salesforce, every year, they do their state of marketing, and they go out and they survey marketers. And in this case, it was really this chart is showing how has the post-pandemic landscape impacted you and the way that you're looking at digital and digital marketing. And basically what it's saying here, if you look at the chart, everything that's dark is that we've completely changed the way that we're approaching this area. And then the next is somewhat changed. So it's changed. And then the other is, no change at all. So you can see immense amounts of change has happened, whether it's your workplace strategy, whether it's workflows and processes, data management strategy. The last three are the ones that are really interesting to me, and that's marketing channel mix, the way that you're going to market it to the market with your information, and then content strategy. It's so important. And then the importance of metrics. So I think the one thing that I love about digital is it's real time, and you really can fine tune and understand the impact that your programs are having. And so it's just an important piece of the puzzle to consider. And then this one is maybe feels like it's out in left field, but Harvard Business Review just did an article about the new you. And I think why I'm pointing to this is that the new you, consumers are changing. The way that consumers are consuming products and services, they're no longer looking for siloed products and siloed services. What they want is they want a solution that is going to give them results. And this article actually pointed to payers in healthcare, and it pointed to how they, it's been going on now for a decade or so. But it's really about, they don't want to pay for fee for service. What they want to do is they want to pay for results. And so what this article is telling me is that it's not only happening in healthcare anymore, it's actually going to happen across many industries, this idea of paying for results. And so what are the drivers in health and human services? So we all know that health and human services has moved from a highly regulated government utility and really moved more into this competitive model. And why? So consumerism is really driving healthcare. A lot of consumers are having to pocket a lot of, or have a lot of out-of-pocket expenses. And they're, expecting results from what they're paying for. Competition, there's an enormous amount of competition happening now with virtual solutions. So as things go digital, that's a space that is going to become more and more and more important. And then the shift from fee for service to value-based. And then the reimbursement is really shifting more towards health plans. And then there's more competition for charitable contributions and grant dollars. And I just love this slide. So you need no marketing when you have guaranteed funding, you have no competition, you are in marketing, or you're in a market where there's little change, and then you've got a large unrestricted endowment. And so if that is you, this is probably the wrong webinar.
Yeah, you can leave.
Okay, so one more poll. So is marketing responsible for revenue generation?
Suspense is killing me.
I know.
Ooh, 33% say yes, 50% say no, 17% say I'm not sure.
Wow. Okay, well, I'm going to make this really easy for you. Marketing is absolutely responsible for revenue generation. When I first started in marketing, we used to be a cost center, and it was really all about, it was tactics. It was just, anyway, it was a very, very different world. And I remember it used to just drive me crazy because I wanted to understand the impact of what I was doing on the market. Well, it's a complete about face now. So marketing is 100% involved in almost every single piece of the business, and it needs to be. I think many of you maybe have heard of Seth Godin, and the reason I bring this up, this slide up, is that in his mind, marketing is everything. It's, you know, how you answer the phone. It's I can't see my slide here, but anyway, it's everything. What you do for your employees, your ability to exceed expectations. And I would even take that a step further. And to me, marketing is the engine that supports organizations in achieving their strategic objectives, whether acquiring new consumers, reaching payers, or recruiting staff. Strategic marketing provides the tools to dial in for success. So marketing isn't about tactics anymore. Marketing is really about understanding your organization's strategic objectives, developing a marketing strategy to support those objectives, and then creating the tactics to engage the right stakeholders. And then launching that, implementing all of the different programs, and then making sure that you're capturing the metrics to be able to know whether or not, or the key performance indicators, to know whether or not you're going to meet the objectives that you have set for the company. And if not, you have the information you need to make adjustments along the way. And so, I wish this little, sorry, I have to move this really quickly. So optimizing these revenue sources. So basically, the bottom line is that marketing is an important aspect of your business's bottom line, and that optimizing your revenue sources is one of the main objectives of any marketing plan. And then, so what is your source of money? Who are your revenue sources? So is it payers of health benefits? Is it government health and human service agencies? Is it foundations, and foundation grants, charitable contributions, whether individual or foundations? Is it consumer direct pay? It's really important to understand that as you're building out your strategy. And then the marketing strategy roadmap. Get caught up here. So if you don't walk away with anything else in this webinar, I hope that you walk away with the idea that your strategic plan is the starting point for your marketing plan. That the bottom line is that if your marketing isn't aligned with what you need to do as a business to sustain yourself or to thrive, then it's not doing its job. And so with the audience that we're talking to, I'm sure that many of you have, done strategic planning. And I put this graphic together just to kind of show quickly where marketing fits into all of this and the importance of marketing, strategic marketing, in the success of organizations. So the first part is really the market analysis. It's understanding the industry trends, it's understanding opportunities and threats, getting feedback from your customers. Do you have any gaps in what you're offering? Talk to your partners, gain feedback, do a competitive analysis and understand what your key differentiators are and how you can spotlight that. And then move into the strategic planning. So review the market analysis, understand and agree as a team what the drivers are, what the trends are, confirm and or redefine your mission. So make sure that your mission is still in alignment with where you're headed as a business. And then develop your organizational objectives or your strategic objectives. And then operationalize it. So each of the business units or business groups creates an operational plan. So operations, finance, marketing goes out and builds their strategic marketing plan. and then implements it. And the beauty of KPIs or key performance indicators and looking at metrics is you can see if you're achieving the goals that you set for yourselves. And then what I would say is quarterly reviews, make sure that you're headed where you want to and make the adjustments that you need to. I guess that speaks to continuous improvement. So what do you need to think about when making marketing decisions? Really, and this is so funny, I can't tell you how many marketing plans I've started and completely forgotten about the vision and mission of the company, and then have to go back and go, hey, wait. So just, the vision and the mission of the organization, which shapes your market positioning, and then the markets that you want to pursue, the customer type or the geography, the service lines to offer, revenue and return required for each service line, and then ultimately, what's the margins required for you to be successful and sustainable as a business. And then, so what's a marketing plan? So a marketing plan really is around those objectives, building a plan that's going to make it happen. So how much revenue does your organization need to meet its mission and its objectives? The strategic plan, so the service lines, how much revenue by service line, what return is required, and then engagement. So it's all about engagement. Who do you need to engage? The payers, the consumers, the donors. And then of those that you engage, how many do you need to sign up to be able to meet your bottom line? Oops. Okay. Oh, getting a little, there we go. And then, so this is kind of what we're going to go through for the rest of the webinar. We're going to kind of dive into the weeds and talk through each of these different phases of a marketing plan. So marketing objectives, market analysis, marketing strategy development, marketing tactical plan, and then the marketing implementation and what that looks like. What team do you need, the timeline, all of that. And with that, I will pass it along to Tim.
Thanks. So I think of, the strategic plan as the what. What do we want to be? What are we going to accomplish? And the marketing plan as the how. How are we going to grow up and be, what our strategic plan says we're going to be? How are we going to accomplish the objectives in our strategic plan? And who do we need to influence to do that? So if you want to move ahead to the first slide here, Casey, when you think about, starting your marketing plan, obviously, the first step is to understand the objectives of your strategic plan. So if your objectives are around increasing revenue, which, a lot of objectives are in strategic plans, the strategy options could be things like acquiring new contracts or developing new service lines. A newer objective that I think a lot of the community isn't necessarily thinking about from a marketing perspective is retaining and attracting talent, clinical talent especially. But if that is, an objective in your strategic plan, again, your marketing plan is the how, right? So your marketing plan needs to support that. And whether it's, attracting new revenue sources or attracting new talent, the marketing plan, tactics, and the audiences are still going to lay out the same in the following plan. But it all goes back to understanding what we're trying to accomplish at the beginning. So that's where we start. If you want to move ahead. So the marketing objectives are obviously going to be tied to that strategic plan. Now, the last time I feel like we did one of these marketing seminars, about a third of the audience did not have a strategic plan in place. So about, 3/4 of you should know what objectives we're trying to reach when we're making our marketing plan. The other quarter, kind of needs to pause. And if you're building a marketing plan for the sake of building a marketing plan, because you have a marketing department, you're going to be trying to do too many things at once, and you're not going to be able to measure the success against the organization's strategic objectives. So, all of this will go forward, will build off of those objectives. And I can't, stress that enough, how important it is for the marketing plan to be an extension of those strategic objectives, because that's ultimately how we can judge success. So whether it's revenue for a current service increasing, if we need to increase volume, or if we're in a performance-based contract and that, the increase would come from performance bonuses or whatever the stipulations are. If it's, new contract acquisition because we're not getting the funding or the government funding and contracts that we're used to getting, or there's more competition in the area now. COVID has brought more virtual competition, so I feel like a lot of the providers are feeling that crunch as well. Historically, our pillar service lines maybe aren't producing the same types of revenue margins, so maybe we need to look at different service lines, or maybe we need to look at even stopping service lines altogether. So all of these things could end up being objectives or strategies tied to those objectives based on your individual organization. So we have 3 marketing example marketing objectives here. I think I gave the staff, or retaining clinical talent and attracting new clinical talent. So here's some other examples of what might be the start of your marketing plan. Increasing the financial stability of your residential treatment program by establishing an average daily census of 250 or an average daily rate of 225. Again, these are, all just examples. Don't criticize the numbers. We're trying to show you examples of what would start your marketing plan. Selectively expanding profitable community-based programs to match the market needs. Increasing community-based revenue by 100%. Seems like a lofty goal, but organizations that are in acquisition mode, this would be a typical type of marketing objective. Increase and diversify revenue streams overall by expanding Medicaid billing to 25% of your total revenue and decreasing your grants to less than 50%. So this would be more of a revenue diversification strategy. Again, still under marketing, because marketing is an extension of trying to achieve your strategic objectives. So here is the interesting question. And I'll be interested to see if it's still the same split as the last time we asked this. Are you aware of your organization's strategic objectives, and are they clear to you, either in your executive role, your marketing role, or if I think there was a small percentage in a different role, but still they should be clear for the whole organization. So are you aware of them? Are they clear? Are you comfortable knowing what they are so we could build a marketing plan together? %78 said yes, nice. 11% said no, and 11% said other. Next time we will not give an other option, I think, Casey, because yes or no is pretty much the 2 options there. We lost the screen share.
Yep.
There we go. Yep. So that's good. Is there anybody in the audience brave enough to share their marketing or their strategic objectives from their strategic plan, or even one? While I would love for you to be willing to come on camera, I will just ask that you type it in the chat, because I'm realistic here. Is anybody willing to be brave and tell us one? Stacy, Justine, are there any that came in that I can't see?
There are not.
Okay, that's okay. We will roll forward with the examples then. Kind of expected that. Maybe somebody will be brave enough by the end. Okay, so now that we know our objectives, we know what we want to accomplish. The next step to building our marketing plan is surveying the terrain. So this is knowing, our landscape, our competitors, what we're up against when we're trying to accomplish this goal. So the first step is doing the market analysis of the macro environmental landscape. So here we'll want to look at any of the demographic forces, which could be the population that we serve, the region, the culture, any economic environment issues that would be barriers to success in achieving this objective, any kind of technology forces, meaning are there large technology investments required for us to achieve this objective? Is there a chance that a new technology could be a barrier to achieving whatever our objective is because it's either bringing in new options or more competition? And then really understanding the market size and the characteristics of that market. Is there a big enough market, and is there enough volume for this objective to work? I mean, are we setting ourselves up to fail just because there isn't enough volume to achieve what we want to achieve? Are there different market needs or access issues that could prevent us from being able to achieve this? So it's really, this is kind of the landscape portion of the analysis is really kind of setting the stage for, do we need to pivot our objective? Because in our current market and environmental situation, it's not as easy or not even possible, based on certain factors. So this would, kind of help us pivot early on if we find that the data does not support any success in achieving our goal. So the next step is really knowing who you're targeting. So, if you come to any of our branding or online marketing education programs, I feel like I shout this from the rooftop. The number one thing is knowing your audience, right? So for your specific objective, the second most important part besides knowing the objective is knowing who you're trying to influence, is knowing who you're talking to try to get the outcome that you want, right? So, a marketing program geared towards a payer or another provider, say because your objective is all around acquisition, or your objective is around getting a value-based contract with a health plan, that target audience is so different from a family member or caregiver, per se, if you were trying to increase volume of an existing service. That audience is completely different from clinical talent that you may be trying to attract so you have enough staff to fulfill the demand that is in your area. It's so important to know if you're doing a B2B marketing strategy versus a B2C, or even a talent acquisition marketing strategy, because the voice that you use, the tactics, the platforms, the channels, and even how you measure it is going to be completely different. We'll still go through the same process, but identifying, who it is that we're talking to, who is our main target customer to achieve each objective, is step two, and it's also the second most important step in the process. So here are some examples, and again, I always kind of talk ahead, but we talked about prospective employees, we talked about payers and potential other provider organizations. Something that's kind of a twist on other providers would be Maybe it's specialty provider organizations or specialty programs from other provider organizations in some sort of a partnership model. Maybe it's referral sources, or if with existing referral sources, maybe it's trying to increase the pull-through of your existing referral sources. Maybe it's media and PR because you are the best kept secret on the East Coast and you're thriving. You have some of the best care outcome data and nobody knows about it. These are the types of target audiences that as marketers we don't always consider, because a lot of our thought is geared towards the ultimate customer of who receives our services. But based on the objectives, obviously, this target audience could change. So to prioritize your target markets and your customers, this is kind of when you're building that initial frame of your strategic marketing plan. And I think we have a little tool here in a little that will help you with that. You want to outline those objectives that your marketing plan is going to help you achieve. And then you can correlate who you're talking to with those objectives, because if you have multiple objectives, as most organizations do, you're going to have a marketing plan that results in targeting multiple audiences in different ways and in different strategies. So here is how you would kind of map those out. And then the next step would kind of allow you to prioritize and weight your resources accordingly. So the number one question we always get is, how am I supposed to do all these marketing plans when I have such little resources and such a tiny budget? So regardless of what that budget is, I feel like this tool will help you use it the best way possible. Your strategic plan should have a prioritization of objectives you're trying to achieve. The second column here is who we're going to reach to try to influence, who those target audiences are. And then the third column is the weight. So based on your overall organization's success, how important is achieving each objective in relation to the other objectives. This is a very simple way to take any budget, divide it up, and split the resources towards the appropriate strategies as best you can. Whether it's $50,000 budget or a $5 million budget, the same exercise works. So once you know who you're trying to reach, and what you want them to feel and think to be influenced enough to help achieve your objective, you want to put yourself in their shoes. So the third step to this process is really understanding your target audience and what they're living every day, what their mindset is, where they interact and where they get their information from. And the best way to do that is developing customer personas. So if we're trying to get a new contract with a health plan, what is the mindset of that head of provider network for this health plan? What are they looking for? What type of information do they want to see? How do they like to see it? Where do they live when they're online? Are they somebody who likes to make deals in person or see things firsthand? Are they more data driven? It's all about just understanding who it is that you want to influence so you can reach them in the best way possible. So once you know who those target audiences are, step 3 is develop those personas. And then the customer journey map, which is my favorite part, because your inclination, at least mine, of what the journey that target audience takes to make a decision is almost always wrong. So what we find is where we think, say a prospective clinical talent that you would like to attract to your organization, where we think the best places would be to market to them aren't always the best places to reach and actually influence them. So this is why a customer journey map is so important. You can map out where those target audiences go to get the information that ultimately helps them make decisions. One of the customer journey maps that we did, it was around attracting new talent. We found that a lot of the influential information was not found on Glassdoor, was not found on Indeed, was not found on, typical places you go to apply for a job. It was all around comments and recommendations on 2 social media channels, especially in that area, which was, such gold in type of information, especially when you only have so much money to target some of your efforts and campaigns, because this really lets you focus on the areas where, you can actually influence the audience that you're trying to reach. So key questions for your customer journey map. And there's no perfect way to make a customer journey map, and we do have examples on the Open Minds website. But essentially, whether it is a top-notch, professionally done customer journey map that examines, an entire target market by the type of audience that you're trying to reach, or whether you bootstrap this and do it yourself, you want to know what information will my target audience look for when they're searching for our services. So, you have to generalize that. So if your target audience is a payer and you want to get a contract, what type of information will that payer want to know? What are they looking for before they accept a meeting, or what are they looking for when they're trying to choose who this contract's going to go to? What are the most popular channels and methods that this audience uses to find this information? So that goes back to the example from social media channels versus some of the typical job websites. When we do a lot of customer journey maps, we find that a lot of executive roles, whether in payer or provider organizations, a lot of executives tend to get information from in-person conferences and on social media from LinkedIn, almost 4 to 1 over any other channel. But on the other side, family members, caregivers, especially in the digital world, their preference was far greater on Facebook, ratings and review websites, referral websites, and places where they could see comments, reviews from other people that they trust, and not necessarily in a professional, marketed to them manner. So it's really important to understand, what that channel is, regardless of who you're trying to reach. And then it's kind of, a catch-22 depending on what that channel is, because you have to understand what influence do I have over that channel. Some of the more important or more influential channels, especially on consumer-driven type services, are third-party rating and review websites, or a payer network, their website of all of the providers in their network, or even a place like an Angie's List or a Health Grades, where there are ratings and reviews done by the population that aren't always vetted. So it's important to know, what can I impact and where should I spend those resources so I don't go down a rabbit hole, trying to change something that's ultimately not, able to be changed. And then, is there a potential moment of truth? So that's kind of a marketing word that Google made famous, but the moment of truth is, in every buying cycle and any purchasing decision, there's one moment towards the end where that actual decision is made in the mind of anybody, whether you're a B2C customer or a B2B situation. And it's, if you can identify obviously that key point in the timeline, you can allocate your resources accordingly to the more important spots on the journey as well. So if you do any customer journey map and you don't have, great examples, or the comprehensive templates that you find are just too much, these are the 4 key questions that you want to answer, because the strategy and the tactics that result from them will be based on these answers. So know your competition. So let's just regroup real quick. We know our objectives. We know, based on our objectives, who we're marketing to now, right? So we know our target audiences. We put ourselves in the shoes of our target audience. We try to think like them. We now know where they go to get their information, what information they want to see, and hopefully, where they make their decisions in that purchasing cycle. Now we have to kind of know what we're up against. So knowing your competition, if you don't know your competitors, your main competitors, a lot of geographic, a lot of providers that are more geographically based have a good idea of who their competition is. But you don't always consider competition outside of those geographic borders now because of technology. So creating a comprehensive list of who those main competitors are, conducting research on each in regards to their programs, their performance, what their market share is, what do they do well, what do they do not so well, do they already have a significant portion of the population that we sized early on in that environmental landscape, and then obviously their pricing and their contracts, because that's all going to play a role in whether we win when we implement the strategy that we'll put in place next. Here is a competitive analysis template. If you've done a strategic marketing plan or a strategic plan with Open Minds, this probably looks familiar. Just some of the key areas to focus on. I think we touched on most of these, but in this marketing section, which is new to the presentation, the marketing strategy and the market share, the product, services, and the pricing are going to play key roles later on when we talk about developing a differentiation strategy. So how do we look different? How do we position ourselves as better than our competitors? And in terms of pricing, how do we position ourselves as either equal or better in performance, but less expensive in costs? So this is where those elements kind of enter the strategic planning realm in terms of a competitor analysis. The SWOT information has been, there from the beginning. I would note, from a marketing perspective, things like donations or a strong foundation of revenue that could be used for marketing if in competition with other providers is something you want to note here. Things like established digital programs, things around having success or the capabilities to succeed when building a marketing program in your market are specifically important to know in this stage, because it could end up being a barrier based on your own capabilities and your own marketing budget going forward. So that's just something we don't typically talk about that I wanted to make sure that we mentioned. Here's an example competitor analysis, and I feel like we're probably going really in depth on some of these slides that I've told Casey that I wouldn't. So Casey, I'm sorry, I just can't help myself. But here's an example. All of these slides are available in the deck, but in the interest of time, I'm gonna zoom past this competitor analysis example. The market analysis and the positioning. So here's where, well, after the market analysis is where it gets fun for me. So in the service line market analysis, obviously, you want to understand your current service line, what the capabilities of it are, what your USP is. I'm hoping that you think of your service lines as having a unique selling proposition right now. That's not usually the case. So here's a good opportunity to identify if it doesn't have a USP, or if your USP is outdated, how you position the service line against others. Monica always asks the same questions when we get to these parts. Is it going to be the cheapest? Are you going to be the best? Are you going to be the fastest? Like, what are you in terms of positioning that makes you better than the other options? It's not necessarily, what the strategy is. It's knowing, what you want to be and being clear so you can market it that way. And your current models and strategies. And I think if you have this information, or if you have these things, how to get the information, should be from your own internal sources. Service lines, I think we can zoom past this, Casey. So understanding your service line strategy and performance. So now that we've kind of mapped out what's special about our service lines, what we want them to be, whether it's the best in terms of performance or good performance at a good value, or the most available in the area. It's understanding, their individual performance in terms of a business bottom line. So in terms of profitability, you want to look at all of your services and the margins that they're contributing to your overall bottom line. This is an example of how to map that against potentially some service lines that are either losing money or are not performing from a business perspective as well as they used to. A lot of times we look at service lines as so crucial to serving the population or the needs of the population around us, or the service line that maybe our organization, was really founded upon decades ago. So this is kind of a more tactical approach to looking at it, because we need to know from a business perspective which service lines are making money and which service lines are not. So once we know that, obviously we can take the deep dive into the analysis of each service line. So you should be able to answer this either from the executive team level or the actual team that is working within that service line. The description, the target markets, who we're serving, our sales history historically. Is there a trend there that we need to be mindful of? The pricing and the payment structure. Is there a trend there that we need to be mindful of? This is where a lot of the fee for service and the change to more value-based approaches is really changing some of the service line profitabilities. Our cost data, our operational parameters, any marketing strategy that we've done in the past, what has worked in the past, or did we never need to really market a service in the past? Both important things to know. Then we pull in that competitor analysis data from earlier, assuming that they have the same service line, and we compare our USPs against our competitors as well as our positioning. We should be able to, based on this trend data, competitor analysis, environmental analysis, understand the overall opportunity for the service line, or from a business perspective, if it needs to be changed or potentially even cut. So within the market positioning, your USP, if you've not crafted one, I think we've kind of created a little guide here of how to do so. What do your competitors do well? What do we do well? Ultimately, what do our customers or consumers want? The USP is kind of the cream in the middle of this, Oreo, because we need to highlight what we do well, right? That's what's unique about us, who we are. We need to know what our competitors do well so we can frame the USP as being better or more unique. And we have to know what the customers want, because the USP should also solve the problem of the customers that we're trying to reach. And here's the definition. I'm not going to read that off the screen, but I think next we have some examples, and we did fun ones because this has been extremely detailed so far, and I'm very aware. So the candy that melts in your mouth and not in your hand is an awesome USP because there's no real problem to solve when you're M&Ms, right? So what makes, you know, M&Ms so great in comparison to XYZ candy? You know, it's, in their opinion, the fact that it is so soft and ready to melt in your mouth. Your hands don't get messy, but you know, you still get to enjoy that chocolatey goodness. Great example. A residential recovery program that allows residents to focus on recovery, not rent. Great way to frame a service line or a program where you've decided you're going to be cost effective. You know, we don't want to use the word cheap, but in comparison to others in the market, maybe you're less expensive but providing equal or better performance. Great way to showcase it is that USP. And then a single point of care and education for children and young adults with IDD, autism, and their families. So in markets where, you know, you have to see 7 different specialists for 7 different issues related to the same person, this is a great example of a USP that solves a problem and differentiates itself from all of the single services in the area of their competitors who maybe don't offer the full comprehensive program of services that that provider would offer. And then the positioning statement. So positioning is designing and offering brand and image to make a distinctive place in the mind of the customer. So again, this is whoever you're trying to influence, this is creating that brand image of who you are in their mind. And we have some example market positioning here. The pricing, the rates and the models, knowing your costs, your desired margin, the value to your target customer, important items to consider in your analysis. I think we've gone through most of this. Who the customer is, what the professional fees are, the FTE hours involved, required visits and appointments, volume to achieve the margin goals, and then any potential telehealth options. So when you're talking, I mean, this is going to be more relevant, obviously, for objectives that are geared towards growing revenue with existing services. But you know, when you're talking about pricing rates and models in this situation, you have to understand that the price is more than a number. You know, it relates to the market position, the value prop, how your customers or your target customers are going to perceive you, and the quality of the service. And it all obviously is going to play a huge role in the profitability. And we have a internal service line analysis example that you could use in your organization as well. We have tools built throughout this entire deck. I hope you use them.
Okay, so marketing strategies, blazing the trail. So I'm just going to quickly walk through a couple of examples. I'm going to do a time check. So we're at 2:05 Eastern, and we still have quite a bit to get through. Not that much, so anyway. Just to kind of recap, so we have walked through the process of looking at who you're marketing to, or what your overall objectives as a company are, who the audience is, where the revenue is coming from. There are a number of tools that are available to you. And after this webinar, all of the slides will be available to you in a PDF. So anyway, if you missed anything, you can go back and get the information or the tools. So in this case, it really is, this is an example of how you would take a organizational objective or strategic objective, put it into a marketing objective, and then start breaking it into the strategy. And then from the strategy, then you take it into the tactics. So I know when I first started marketing, it was all about the tactics, and a lot of this work did not happen up front. So it really was in alignment. And a lot of what marketing did was kind of in a vacuum and not as effective as it might have been. So in this case, in this example, it's really, so the strategic objective of the organization is to increase residential program revenues. And it could be that there's actually a number there, 25%. And then the objective, the marketing objective, is to increase the financial stability of the residential treatment program by establishing an average daily census of 250, an average daily rate of 225 in the next fiscal year. So Tim talked about this earlier, so it's the same example. And then the way that that would show up as a marketing strategy would be to establish the blank school as a center of excellence for the treatment of children with special needs across all payer types. And then to garner an increased share of referrals from educational consultants, increase the number of managed care contracts, win residential treatment contracts with the surrounding states and the counties in those states, and then improve the conversion rate of inquiries to admission. So these are all of the strategies that you would use to meet that objective number one. And then you would build the tactics, understand who the audience is, where they're getting their information, and then start building out a plan. And I am not going to bog you down with the next two examples, but they're here in the PowerPoint if you want to go back and kind of look at how we framed them. That would be helpful. And now we get into the tactics and the budgeting. So how do you start looking at this? So a long time ago, marketing used to be the 4 Ps: product, price, place, promotion. And we've added now public relations and politics. And basically what that means is the product is, what do you offer? What is your, what are the service lines that you're offering? Price, what is your rate? What is your pricing structure? Place, what is your sales distribution method? Promotion, and to me, promotion is really about communication to your potential consumers, to the B2B, B2C, to grants. It's all about your communication. And then public relations is really, how do you let your community, your broader community, know about you and what you're doing? How do you demonstrate thought leadership? So it's with the press, it's with the public outside of your community. It's a great tool. And then political is really political advocacy and lobbying. And is that something that you're doing for yourself? Are you part of an organization that is in DC, making sure, or within your state, making sure that they know what your challenges are and that there's somebody there fighting for you? So these are great. These slides really give you the key questions to ask around each of these areas. We do have time, but I'm not going to bog you down with it. We'll go through a couple of them and just keep moving. But the product and service, really, what is the specific service being offered? How does it address the customer's unmet needs? And then how does the customer define a quality service experience? And what makes the customer select one service over another? So these are things, this really just gets down into the weeds with what each of these pieces of a marketing mix, what it is and what you need to know about it. Same here. So I guess the big question really that people start to ask is how much money to invest in marketing? How much money should I be investing in marketing? And I think for me as a marketer, this was always the big, it was decided at the top, and then it trickled down. And what I have found is that if you really understand what your objectives are and build out a return on investment, then it's not about this question anymore. It really becomes how impactful can marketing be? What is it that we need them to do for us? And let's make sure that we're getting the return on the investment we need to be able to cover the cost. So I would do it backwards. So in this case, we start at the end with a revenue number you're looking for, and then we build the tactics needed to achieve those revenue numbers through sales to customers of the service you have to offer. And then marketing budgets are about return and not expense. All marketing investment should have a measurable return. So that comes into marketing should no longer be a cost center. It really should be a driver for your revenue. So start with forecasting. So estimate the revenue, understand your marketing objectives, and your strategic plan should equal your revenue forecast. Come up with your marketing budget, and then what are the costs of the tactics and the plan?
So one quick example here, because again, we have to generalize it to be based on any of the objectives, but in a scenario where you're trying to attract top, clinical staff, especially in, a shortage or when demand is at all-time highs, you would get to this and you would say, well, there's no revenue, goal associated with having new employees and new hires. So you have to, kind of just rethink that as in your strategic plan, you have revenue objectives for service lines, and you can only achieve said revenue objectives with the proper amount of staff that you need, especially top clinical talent. So what is the potential loss if you cannot provide those services? What revenue impact would that make? Because when you consider the revenue loss, the marketing spend in relation to the potential loss is a comparable data points as opposed to how much revenue you're trying to gain, right? So a lot of people, have struggled historically justifying marketing campaigns around attracting and retaining talent. Another way to look at that is, the opportunity lost in not having that talent. I just wanted to point that out, Casey.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think that's really important because it's a different landscape for hiring, and there are a lot of people that have lists. So if they don't have a lack of demand by consumers, but they don't have the staff to be able to meet those demands. So it's becoming a more and more important part of a business's strategic objectives for sure. And another example, I'm trying to think of another example of a hard cost where maybe you go to, I'm completely going blank here. Sorry, I'm just going to keep going. I think the most important thing, the takeaway, is that marketing shouldn't be a cost center. Marketing should be a revenue generator, and it should cover its own cost through a return on investment. And so really understanding that and being able to have the measurements you need to understand what that looks like. And so the marketing tactical planning builds your marketing budget. So basically it's what do you need to do to build your budget? And I actually build out an entire spreadsheet for my budgets. It's where am I going to be spending? What is it that I need to do? What's my strategy? What are the tactics? And what is the cost of all of the elements within that? So confirm your objectives, strategies, and related timeframes. So understanding how that is going to impact over time. Because if I do a big initiative in January, I may not see the results of that until April. So it's just understanding how there might be a lag in the actual revenue generation for the plan. Build your tactics to implement each strategy. So what are the tactics I'm going to use? Estimate your revenue income for each strategy. So what do I have to bring in? Estimate your expenses. Combine those estimates to create your revenue projections and your marketing budget, and then retool tactics and budget. So it could be that my budget shows up at $750,000, and all I'm going to get from this service line is 500,000. So there might be a discrepancy, and it could be you say, okay, I know that I'll make that up over the next year if I invest that additional money now. Or nope, this is a hard stop. I only have this amount of money to spend right now. And then it's about going back and reevaluating your budget and your objectives, and if it makes sense. So retooling. I loved this graphic. This was from the Salesforce State of Marketing, and it really does demonstrate all the different things that you need to consider when you're building out your budget. Both tactics. Staffing is one of those really important things. But for B2B or B2C, it's advertising. It's what tools and technology do you need? Do you need HubSpot? Do you need Salesforce? Is there CRM that you need to invest in? People, wages and training. Is there content? Can you develop that yourself, or do you need to hire somebody to come in and do it? Events and sponsorships, getting out there in front of your consumers or payers, being able to shake hands and have conversations. There's a cost to that sometimes. And then on the B2B side, it's all of that plus account-based marketing. And that really is getting the list of folks that you want to contact and being very strategic about the way that you reach out to them. And then this is a cool tool. And basically it's just, this is using a spreadsheet, but it's really spelling this out. Okay, what is the the organization's objectives, and then what is my objective, what is the strategy, and then what are the tactics that are actually going to get me there. So I'm just going to read a few of these. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but conduct a gap analysis of your center of excellence. Develop a gap closure, gap improvement plan. So these all have money and people associated with it. And then what do you do once you do that upon completion of success targets? So you finalize promotional copy and materials. You promote the center of excellence through these challenges. So it's first you do the tactics, then you figure out from the information that you get how you're going to get the information out there, and then it comes down to KPIs and making sure that that you're doing what you wanted to do with the tactics that you're using. I hope this makes sense. And then this is another. So this is an example that literally shows. These are all of the costs associated with the tactical steps. And the investment to establish a center of excellence is $645,000. But the projected annual revenue is going to be $500K. And so it's good to be able to understand that and then make a business decision about that gap.
Yeah, and the LOE column here was added, and this is how do you value time, right, of the staff that you already have? So this was something we added based on that question, and it's how we put a number to time at Open Minds. So if one of the steps in the tactic is conducting a gap analysis, and employee Bill is going to do it in this scenario, it's going to take him 60 hours by our estimate to do that task. So this is how we put a number to it, based on an hourly rate if they're an hourly employee, or if they're a salary employee, doing the backwards math of what the hourly rate of that person really is, you can actually put cost to time of your own internal resources, so you can truly judge the overall cost budget of the tactic. Just wanted to explain what LOE was, because we love acronyms at Open Mugs.
So the market plan implementation. And so when you're getting ready to implement the plan, all of the tactics, you really need to consider your marketing staff, and you need to think about implement the marketing plan and monitor the progress. So it's implementing the plan that you've come up with, and then making sure that you have the data you need to be able to monitor the progress. And I love this quote: the marketing plan that isn't implemented is the marketing plan that won't succeed. So it's really, really making sure that you have the staff that you need with the skills to be able to execute on the plan, and then that you're able to monitor it and make sure that it is it's performing in the way that you want it to perform. Okay, so we have another survey, and the question is, which of these most closely resembles how marketing is staffed in your organization? Okay, Tim, I can't see what the poll says.
It's an even split. 50% there is a head of marketing with one team member.
Okay.
Or marketing is a split role. So I would say all of the options were probably understaffed, but this was, the two in the middle, B and C.
Thank you. So the big staffing question is, how many and what do they do? And who do they report to? And where does marketing and business development fit into the organization? And I think really in this case, and Tim, step in, it depends. It depends on you, it depends on the organization. It really depends on what it is that you're trying to achieve.
It depends on the objectives, right? And the strategies and the level of effort associated with your tactical plan. Not just in terms of the number, but the talent of the individual people. Are the tactics more geared towards communications and highlighting excellent programs or excellence in clinical delivery? I mean, that skill set from a marketing person is much different than, is it geared towards Google AdWords or SEO or Facebook type marketing, digital marketing campaigns. So again, to Casey's point, historically we've kind of done this backwards, where we get a number, we get a budget, and we have staff, and we have to try to figure out how to make it work. Where ideally, we should know our objectives, and we build a strategy to achieve them. We estimate how long it's going to take and how many people and what talent we need to make it happen. And that's how you can determine ultimately how big your budget should be in your department as a whole.
And then, and it's really all about the math. I liked what Tim said too, is that it's so important that the skills be aligned. So there are a lot of different arrangements that you can do. Is that me? Did you hear that too, Tim, or is it just on my end?
I think it's just you.
Okay. Anyway, there are a lot of arrangements that you can do. There's you can have employees, you can bring in contractors if there's a specific project that you need to have done. It's very common with business development that, and to some extent marketing, to have a significant portion of the compensation based on performance. So having key performance indicators and meeting those, and having compensation associated with that, some variable income. And I guess the really important thing to remember is one size will not fit all. It really needs to be specific to what it is you're trying to do and the role, and that when you're thinking about what needs to be done, that you define it clearly when you go out to recruit for that position. And the last thought here is really that it's better to have a part-time person that has the specific talent to do what you need them to do than to have a full-time person that is a misfit generalist. So somebody that's kind of just getting tossed in and expected to figure it all out, or to invest in training. And then this is a ginormous list that I am not going to go through with you, but basically the point of this this slide here is that what are your revenue sources and what are the skills required for you to be able to meet those folks and be able to get them the information that they need to make the decision that you want them to make.
I think I spoiled the slide when I jumped in earlier, as I typically do.
You did a great job. And the truth is that this could be split and spliced in so many different ways. I think of it as direct to consumer marketing, B2B marketing, who are you targeting for nonprofit, so for major gifts. It's different talents, it's a different approach. So it's just really understanding that and being able to understand what you need done and who has the skills to be able to get it done.
And is it a long-term strategy? Is this something, that is going to be a basis of how we accomplish our goals year over year? Or is this, a very specific strategy that we're using this year because of X, where, the talent of said employee may be, only applicable in this instance. I mean, that also plays a role if you're going to be doing similar campaigns based on objectives of your organization year after year. Maybe that full-time employee that could grow and continue to grow with the organization does make sense as an investment. So it's also, I think that's an important factor as well.
Yeah. Or do you work with an agency? Do you work with consultants? Do you bring in the talent to be able to do that specific piece of the pie and then be able to leverage people to administer within your organization? Oh my goodness. Okay, so
Yep.
So who's responsible for revenue? And I think that the bottom line here is that there might be different components of revenue that different people within the organization own. But there has to be accountability for those pieces of the pie. So somebody within the organization needs to be responsible for revenue. So being a customer-oriented organization at all levels is essential, but needs specific executive responsibility for particular components of the revenue. I guess I'm just saying the same thing. So it's important to be customer-oriented, and you also need to be responsible for revenue and how that's coming in. And if everybody is responsible, then nobody is responsible. And so it's just really critical when you're working out your objectives to make sure that there is somebody that is reporting weekly or monthly on revenue and meeting the goals and objectives. And if they're not being met, then what needs to change and what needs to be dialed in to make sure that it does. Did you want to add something to that, Tim?
No, I just think that this is kind of the slide that explains why marketing is responsible for revenue generation, right? Because ultimately, if marketing is the how to the what we're trying to achieve, it's the how we're going to do it. Ultimately, then marketing has to be responsible for whether it works or not, and whether it's a marketing department or it's a marketing program within a product line. I mean, that there's a million, ways to arrange an organization to have, marketing functions. But in either scenario, I feel like it comes down to marketing is responsible for whether that strategy, those tactics were done and did they achieve the set objective. And usually they're tied to revenue. So marketing ultimately tends to be responsible for revenue generation in an organization.
Yeah. And so when to measure. So this is that. I think there is so much data out there right now. There's so much. And it's what do you need to measure to be able to look at what needs to be adjusted and shifted. So you need to look at your marketing spend. You need to look at the revenue by programs. You need to understand the census by program. And that's trends over time. So a lot of these are trends over time. It's sort of, if you're not doing that now, you can start a baseline and start mapping that now. Referral to intake time. How much time is it taking? Is there any way to shorten that time and shorten time to revenue? Online presence and engagement. So do you have an online presence? Do you have a website? Are people engaged? Are you engaged in social? Is it working for you? It's one thing to have people that are following you. It's another to engage them and to have them take action. Competitive strength. So what is the unit and case cost? Customer preference, marketing positioning. So you just need to understand that compared to your competition. So competitive analysis never ends. It's a constant thing. You need to understand what your competition is doing, any shifts that they're making, any new types of competition that are coming into the market. Digital is one of those things to keep an eye on. Number of inquiries by program. So where are you getting those inquiries? Is it online? Is it telephone? Or is it events? I don't know. It's just understanding what's working and what's not working, and what you can do to adjust that. Number of referrals by program, by source. So really understanding who your sources of referrals are, whether it's a payer, your website. And then look at the trends over time. And again, this is the data where when you start looking at it, you have those, you're able to adjust and do more of what's working and less of what's not. Telephone abandonment, is that happening and why? And I would be looking at the website too. Where are people? If you built your website for the consumer's journey or customer journey, being able to see where people are abandoning the process and being able to figure out why and finesse and fine tune that. And then intake to assessment conversion rate. So really understanding all of the data and what's working and what's not. And if you are getting people jumping, why, and then what can you do to remove it? And then this is a really great, I don't know what we call table, I guess, with detailed information about how to measure marketing effectiveness. I'm not going to go into the details of it, but it's available to you.
Customer acquisition cost, yeah, I love Shark Tank, so I try to apply the customer acquisition cost to any situation in life. And really, I mean, in a scenario where you're trying to, how do you measure the resources, the time, and all the energy you spend in getting a new contract with a health plan, or winning, an RFP, or all of the activities associated with getting donations from the community? That goes back to that cost budget model, understanding the costs associated with the resources that we did to have influence the health plan, the pitch deck we made, the articles and speaking engagements we got for our top clinical staff so they could be highlighted for the great outcomes that they've caused. All of that in comparison to, okay, we got this contract and what is the revenue generation that we'll achieve from it over the next 5 years. So the cost of everything we did versus, you know, the bonus, the plus of the contract achieved is how you would look at it. In that scenario, you know, we talked about the staff scenario where not having all the staff we need to fill demand, you know, the opportunity lost in comparison to the marketing spend. There's a model for every scenario to determine, you know, customer is a general word. How much money did it take to get what we wanted to achieve done? And was it worth it? And I think that's the most important metric in pretty much any marketing scenario.
I have an example of that, the consumer acquisition. I worked for an organization and we worked really, really hard on RFPs, and we were not the price leader. We were the premier. You know, we were really all about. We were probably the. But anyway, we were the premium provider, and we would never win RFPs. And the amount of energy that went into it was extraordinary, and the cost. And so we ended up backing out of that just because once we did the cost acquisition, the consumer acquisition cost or the acquisition cost for RFPs, it just didn't make any sense. So the keys to successful marketing. And I love this slide because it's really about, are you meeting your marketing objectives? Are your service lines producing projected results? Has anything changed in the competitive landscape? And then evaluate your plan. So it's a continuous loop, right? We did the objectives, we looked at the service lines, we're continuing to pay attention to the competitive landscape, and we're evaluating our marketing plan. Is it working? Is it doing what we thought it would do? Are our key performance indicators, are they where we want them to be? Are we meeting our timelines? That could be really critical. And are we measuring the right things? So are the things that I'm measuring allowing me as a business leader make adjustments in my business to perform better? I mean, ultimately, to me, that's what KPIs are. They're not about, it's really about, am I meeting my objectives? My objectives were set to ensure the sustainability and success of my organization. Am I measuring the right things? So I think that's really important to continuously evaluate and continuously improve. And Tim, that brings us to the end of our presentation. We've got time at the end here for questions and anything that you want to say on closing.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, you know, I think we've driven home the point that marketing and strategy are one and the same. Any organization with a strategic plan needs to think of their marketing strategy as the way to achieve those objectives. You know, those are not two different functions. And when marketing is responsible for revenue growth, we invest in marketing, we learn from our mistakes, and we measure how our tactics and our strategies work. You know, over time, marketing is a self-sustaining function in any organization, as long as it's tied to achieving those organizational goals. So I think that's kind of my key takeaway here.